Okay, we're continuing. This is part 3 of quotes of Martin Luther. I'm going to show a couple more paintings because I think they're relevant to the message and the feeling that one gets studying Luther and the consequences of Luther's Reformation. And then in the later part, the fourth, maybe even the fifth part, I'll start going through more of the actual quotes and writings of Martin Luther. So here is Luther on how should a Christian behave. And the quote here is, "If he have faith, the believer cannot be restrained. He betrays himself. He breaks out. He confesses and he teaches the gospel to the people at the risk of life itself." Martin Luther. Okay, so Luther was a very intense, passionate, scholarly guy, reading and studying all the time. You know, with a PhD back in those days, quite rare. But the average person doesn't read. I mean, the average person's a illiterate or a functional illiterate. So what I'm trying to say is this Lutheran Protestant ethic, it doesn't appeal to the vast majority of people. There wasn't as much else to do back in those days in the 1500s, and people were sort of forced to take on the religion of the ruling prince, okay, for the most part. But what I'm saying is it sort of leaves people out. Later, Carl Jung would talk about, he was raised, his father was like a Protestant minister, the bleakness of Protestantism in comparison with Catholic Christianity. Catholic Christianity is much more like a big social club. Protestantism is largely focused on the afterlife, Will you be saved? Oh my God. Whereas Catholic is like, hey, we're all Catholic, let's have fun. All right, there's more to it than that, but it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna get into some of that stuff here. The aesthetic appeal of Christianity. And Alfred North Whitehead, the famous philosopher, he was friends with Bertrand Russell. He said that the Protestant Reformation was a colossal failure. It took what was one of the best things about the whole Christian church, the aesthetic appeal, the beautiful art, the beautiful painting and sculpture, its whole aesthetic sense, its cathedrals and everything, and replaced it with sort of this barbaric concept of philosophy. You must do what I say or you will burn in hell. And it's like, yeah, get out of here. Give me a break. Okay, so anyways, here's an interesting book by this lady, Elizabeth Lev, How Catholic Art Saved the Faith, The Triumph of Beauty in the Counter-Reformation. So the Catholic Counter-Reformation really was magnificent, another magnificent time for art. It was sort of like a new mini Renaissance. Okay, I like this quote by George Santayana. He says, "The Roman Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism." That is very true. Some people, Nietzsche had called Christianity Platonism for the masses. Anyway, Santayana continues, "Christianity arose out of Greek theology and Old Testament morality. Greek theology predominated in Catholicism. The Catholic Church has much in common with Greek paganism. Old Testament morality predominated in Protestantism. The Catholics had a Renaissance. The Protestants had a Reformation." Yes, that's good. That's about right. Okay? That's why, I know the current Catholic Church, organized church leadership stinks, but the religion itself and the tradition of it's magnificent. Here, of course, is Thomas Aquinas, the vision of Aquinas, going before Christ. He said, I've tried my best. I wish I could have done better. And Christ's like, oh, Aquinas, you did a great job. Yeah, I'm proud of you. I'm happy with you. Okay. Thomas Aquinas, unifier of faith and reason. Michelangelo, painting on the walls of the Sistine Chapel. The, creation of the universe, the creation of light, separating from the dark from the light. The most important painting ever made is this one right here. Mankind created in the image of God. All right. So he is part divine versus the alternative is atheistic Darwinism. He's just a talking primate. Okay. This means he's entitled to natural rights. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, privacy, to own property. And this is just also kind of showing how much fun Christian art is, This was Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, which I think is a terrible painting, but I just use these for comparison. It was actually from a lecture about obesity. She's like the before, and The Birth of Venus is like the after by Sandro Botticelli. And what I'm trying to say is the Catholic Church just incorporates ancient Greek creativity, literature, philosophy, and art. The Catholic Church is syncretic. What syncretic means is it can take the best from other cultures and encounters and enjoy them. It doesn't sort of say, oh, you can't do that. That doesn't fit in our church. That's not in the Bible. You can't do it. No, the Catholic Church can learn from other people and benefit where there's something to benefit from. And, the Medicis, the Catholics in Florence, they loved all this artistic stuff, okay? This is primavera, spring, the three graces, okay? It's magnificent. Okay, here is also the School of Athens. And, again, we talked about this a little bit before, but it's magnificent. There is Plato pointing up to the sky, the idea of the perfect forms, Platonic thought. Aristotle pointing down, he's the biologist. He said, let's be practical, let's work with what we can see and know. He's a biologist who sort of began the classification of the animals. He invented the words genus and species, for example. So anyways, there's Socrates and Alcibiades and Bramante as Euclid, if you will. Okay, Michelangelo as Heraclitus, Diogenes, etc. So it's a magnificent celebration of Greek philosophers in Roman architecture in the Vatican. The Vatican, Catholic Christianity, is totally happy and loves the Greeks and Romans. Okay, they're like them in the Old Testament are the roots of Christianity. The New Testament is written in Greek. Okay, I'm showing you all this for contrast with what we're going to sort of talk about. Here's the Annunciation by Sandro Botticelli. And the reason this is all relevant is religion isn't just reading the Bible, okay? The Catholic Church was around for hundreds of years before the Bible. It's this aesthetic sense also. You feel in your heart, this is right, this is good, this is how we should live our life, this is how we should behave. Okay, the wedding of the Virgin. So the guys who don't get to marry her break sticks. And there is St. Joseph and Mary, okay? She was pregnant at the time with Jesus Christu. The Catholic Church totally celebrates the baby, the family. This is Adoration in the Forest by Fra Filippo Lippi. That was common that a priest or something would be an artist too. The Catholic Church appreciates all that kind of stuff. It's very simpatico with, hey, whatever's good for the family, that's good. Okay, I remember these Catholic communities. They were very nice. The people were very nice to each other. Okay, here's the Sistine Madonna and Child. I know a lady who looks exactly like that. And again, celebration of the family. These little angels were on one of the covers of a Van Halen album. Okay, here's another Madonna Magnificat by Sandro Botticelli. Again, aesthetically, it just resonates with your heart. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful family. This is good. The whole family's together. They're happy. It's all good. All right, here's Michelangelo's version of the Holy Family. Here's Michelangelo's Pietà sculpture. Okay, the greatest sculpture ever made. Michelangelo's mother died when he was only 6 years old, and in a sense that statue is like his mother, and he's like Christ. Here's the painting by Caravaggio. He's sort of like the equivalent of Raphael in the 1600s. The real Raphael was in the 1500s. This is Conversion on the Road to Damascus. And like I said, the emotional strength of these, like Pascal had said in his Pensées, you come to Christ and Christianity, by the heart. After you've, sure, you can read all the books, The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel and all that, but you feel in your heart, this is right. This is the best humans can do. This is what is optimal for humans. And it's just, the message is just clear over and over again. There's nothing ambiguous about it. Here's a Doubting Thomas, also painted by Caravaggio. St. Thomas initially said, is it really Christ? Let me see him, let me touch him before I will believe. Okay. And here is Madonna di Loreto by Caravaggio in 1606. And the point of this painting is the church was very much aware of its magnificent advantage for aesthetic appeal, and it celebrated its great painters like Caravaggio. It was commissioned by the church to make these paintings. They're magnificent. And it shows these pilgrims, they're weary after a long journey as pilgrims wanting to, see the baby Christ or wanting to come to Rome. And, other people would say, oh, you can't make a painting with dirty feet and put that in a church. That's disrespectful. But the Catholic Church is no. The poor are our friends, and they don't have any money for shoes. I can tell you, this is very normal. My mother when she was young growing up, she was so poor that she had only one pair of shoes. And she would walk barefoot to school and then put her shoes on when she got to school because she didn't want to get her shoes dirty. That's how poor my mother was when she was growing up, okay? My mom's family was really smart, but they were just poor. The parents had a little argument, it's a long story, and the father left, and they were on their own. So my mom had to work minimum wage jobs. The whole family did. The oldest boy went out in the service and sent his paycheck home to the rest of the kids and the mother, but they were really poor, like this, okay? I know what it means to be poor. My father, too, grew up in a house with a dirt floor. Okay, so anyways, just a little bit more on the aesthetic appeal, and then we'll almost done with this, and then I'll get to the actual words of Luther in the next part. But here, just again showing this cathedral in Milan. Okay, the Catholics just have this magnificent sense of aesthetic beauty. They're the best in the world out. There's nobody even close. There's no buildings anywhere near close to Catholic buildings. No paintings close to Catholic paintings. Look at the interior of Amiens Cathedral. I remember when I walked into these cathedrals in France when I was a young guy. My parents took me there when I was about 20. I wish I had seen these places when I was younger. I would have wanted to be an architect. It's so awesome. The high ceiling that aspires to God, the stained glass windows, the statuary, all the paintings. It's just magnificent. It's the best that mankind could do. Nothing has even come close to rivaling it. You just have a sense of awe. And also, kids should see the great achievements of their ancestors. It makes you want to be like them. So here is on the pilgrimage to Canterbury, like the wife of Bath right there. But again, it brought all the people together. It got the Christians to travel back and forth. It was really good for society. And people got healthier on these pilgrimages. They'd go in spring. They'd get outdoors. They'd get some exercise. They'd get some sunshine. Okay, here's a message of St. Paul preaching in Athens at the Areopagus, painted by Raphael in 1517. If I speak in tongues of men and angels but have not love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And that's an important point. Catholicism is big on that. The spirit of the law is important as the letter of the law, or more important. If I have not love. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm trying to say. The Catholic Church emphasizes that sort of thing. Be good, be nice, be a good member of the parish, of the community. They're not as rule-monger as the Protestants. They're just not, and I like that about them, okay? And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith and could move mountains, but I have not love, then I am nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. Love does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but it does rejoice with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. For we know now in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. What I know now, in part, then I shall know fully. So abide these three, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of all these is love. 1 Corinthians, okay? Verse 13. So anyways, chapter 13. What I wanted you to see was faith, that's the color white. Hope, that's the color green, like the resurrection, like spring. And love, okay, also sometimes called charity. Those are the three colors of the Catholic faith. Okay. That's why I had that tie. I had that tie yesterday. Today I'm sort of wearing a Puerto Rican tie. It looks like an American tie, but it's actually a Puerto Rican tie. Same basic colors. Okay, I just want to show you a couple more paintings, then we'll get on with Luther's words here. I just think these are rather stunning. And what I'm getting at is, we all know about the Renaissance, but there was this Baroque counter-Reformation Renaissance, mini-Renaissance, a lot of people don't know about. So here's St. Ignatius, and he was the founder of the Jesuits, the order of the Jesuits. And what they really should have done, the Pope should have reconciled with Luther and made Luther order of monks, okay, kind of related to the Augustinian order of monks. That's what they should have done. They should have early on just accepted Luther and given him his own order of monks and let him do their thing. It was a mistake for them to argue and break apart Christendom. Anyway, here's the apotheosis of St. Ignatius, okay, going up to heaven. And now, once you understand that St. Ignatius is going up to heaven, wait till you see the next painting. So this is a very good painting. It's a very good painting. It certainly is wonderful and nice and very Baroque-ish, all the You know, it's so ornate and everything. Spectacular. Okay, but wait till you see this next one. Here it is. This is the Apotheosis of Ignatius by St. Ignatius by Andreas Pozzo. Okay, he's like the Michelangelo of painting of the 1600s. Okay, this was painted in 1690. Note the three-dimensional appearance. So here is St. Ignatius, his apotheosis, made a saint going up to heaven. There's Christ with the cross leading the way. And this was painted on a flat surface. Look how three-dimensional it looks. It's just incredible. This is sort of like the apex, it has been said, of Baroque art. The most awesome painting in Baroque art. Now here, take a look at this. Christ by Gianlorenzo Bernini. Okay? Look how spectacular that is. I mean, how difficult is it to paint the face of Christ? And he did it. He did it in sculpture. It's just like spectacular. It's beautiful. Okay? And Gianlorenzo Bernini was called the Michelangelo of sculpture in the 1800s. Okay, another thing is Catholic religion has a good sense of humor. You can joke about stuff. Like here is the famous statue of St. Teresa in Religious Ecstasy by Gianlorenzo Bernini. And I don't care who you are, there's something almost romantic or erotic about this statue, okay? You know, with the angel kind of looking like Cupid with an arrow, and her in submissive religious ecstasy, if you will, okay? That's the kind of thing when I was a kid in Catholic school, we would joke about stuff like this, okay? And I think that's good. Let people see it their own way. Okay, here's another statue by Bernini. Anchises, the father, Aeneas, the son, Ascanius, the grandson of Anchises, okay, fleeing Rome. Fleeing Troy, burning Troy after the Greeks had conquered Troy and were starting to burn the place down. And this was the idea of Aeneas carrying his father, Anchises. So you carry the history of your people inside yourself, and you teach it to the younger generation. If people don't have civilization taught to them, the younger generation does not get it automatically. You don't inherit it genetically. If you don't learn it from your elders, you become a barbarian. So we don't want the world to fall back into barbarism. So we need to learn about these things. Okay. All right, that's the end of part 3 of quotes of Martin Luther. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll have part 4 in a little bit.